AITA for exposing my sister's secret affair at my engagement dinner after she tried to sabotage my relationship. I honestly never thought I'd be posting here, but the fallout from this situation has been so intense and so divided that I need outside perspective. This is long. There is a lot of context. Please bear with me. I am a 30-year-old woman. My fiancé Mark is 32. We've been together for 5 years, living together for 3. We got engaged 3 months ago. My sister Rachel is 34. She is married to her husband Tom, 36, and they have 2 kids together, ages 6 and 4. Growing up, Rachel and I were very close on the surface, but there was always an unspoken imbalance between us. She was the golden child, loud, charismatic, socially gifted. I was quieter, more academic, more reserved. Our parents adored us both, but in very different ways. Rachel was celebrated. I was appreciated. She always had attention. I always had expectations. Still, we maintained what I thought was a solid adult relationship. We talked regularly. She was involved with my engagement planning. She helped me dress shop. She cried when I said yes to Mark. I truly believed we were in a good place. I was wrong. It started subtly. After Mark proposed, Rachel began making comments that felt off. Nothing overt enough to call out, but enough to plant seeds. She would say things like, "Are you sure you're not rushing this? Marriage changes people, you know. 5 years sounds long, but it really is." At first, I brushed it off as normal concern from an older sister. Then she started saying things directly to Mark. I didn't know this until later. Apparently, during family dinners or casual conversations when I wasn't around, she would jokingly warn him about me. She told him I can be emotionally distant. She told him I hold grudges. She told him I shut down during conflict. Some of these things are partially true, but they were framed in a way that made me sound cold and difficult to love. Mark didn't tell me right away because he didn't want to cause drama. He assumed she was just being protective. Then things escalated. Rachel began texting Mark privately. At first, the messages were innocent, asking how work was, complimenting things he cooked, thanking him for helping with her kids. Then the tone shifted. She started venting to him about her marriage. She told him Tom didn't listen to her. She said she felt invisible. She said she regretted settling down so young. Mark tried to keep boundaries. He replied politely but briefly. He didn't flirt. He didn't encourage it. But she persisted. Eventually, she sent him a message that crossed the line. She told him she sometimes wonders what her life would have been like if she'd chosen someone like him instead. Mark immediately shut it down and told her the conversation was inappropriate. She apologized, said she was drunk, said she'd never meant it that way. Mark showed me everything. I was furious, but I also didn't want to blow up my family right before my engagement party. I decided to distance myself quietly and revisit it later. Then came the engagement dinner. My parents hosted a formal dinner to celebrate Mark and me. Both families were there, extended relatives, close friends. It was supposed to be elegant and joyful. Rachel arrived late. She was already tipsy. She made a speech without being asked. In front of everyone, she joked about how Mark clearly has a type, and how some men don't realize what they're getting into until it's too late. People laughed awkwardly. Then she looked directly at me and said, "I just hope you don't get bored of him once the novelty wears off." Something inside me snapped, but I stayed quiet. Then she turned to Mark and said, "If you ever need someone who really understands you, you know where to find me." The room went silent. Mark looked horrified. I stood up. I had not planned what I said next. It came from a place of months of suppressed anger, betrayal, and humiliation. I said, That's rich, coming from someone who's been sleeping with her coworker for the last 8 months. Rachel froze. Her husband Tom looked at her and said, "What?" Rachel started crying immediately. She told me I was a liar. She told everyone I was jealous. She told my parents I was trying to ruin her life. Then I pulled out my phone. I had screenshots. She had accidentally sent me a message meant for her affair partner weeks earlier. When I questioned her, she begged me not to tell anyone. She admitted everything. I kept the messages. I read one aloud. Tom left the room. Rachel collapsed into a chair screaming that I destroyed her family. My parents told me to leave. The dinner ended in chaos. Since then, my family has been split down the middle. My parents say I was cruel and vindictive. They say I should have handled it privately. They say I humiliated her in front of everyone. Rachel has been staying with a friend. Tom filed for separation. Some relatives have thanked me for exposing the truth. Others say I weaponized information at the worst possible moment. Rachel sent me a message saying, "I hope you're happy. You always needed to be better than me." Mark fully supports me. He says she was trying to undermine our relationship and got exposed by her own behavior. But I can't shake the guilt of knowing children are involved and that my timing caused maximum damage. So Reddit AITA for exposing my sister's affair at my engagement dinner after she repeatedly tried to sabotage my relationship. Some commenters said, "NTA, and frankly, she earned every second of that humiliation. Let's stop pretending this was some innocent mistake. Your sister didn't just cheat. She actively attempted to emotionally insert herself into your relationship, undermine your confidence, and position herself as an alternative partner to your fiancé. That's predatory behavior. She didn't get exposed randomly. She provoked the moment. If she hadn't made that final comment to your fiancé in public, this wouldn't have happened. Play stupid games, win catastrophic prizes. YTA, but not for what you think. You are not the villain for telling the truth. You are the villain for how you told it. This wasn't about protecting Mark or setting boundaries. This was a nuclear detonation fueled by months of resentment that you chose to unleash in the most public, destructive way possible. Your sister behaved horribly. She crossed boundaries. She disrespected your relationship. She emotionally leaned on your fiancé inappropriately. But two wrongs don't cancel each other out. You didn't just expose an affair. You detonated a family in front of children, spouses, and extended relatives in a setting that guaranteed maximum humiliation. There is a difference between accountability and annihilation. You chose annihilation. But the real victim here is the kids. Your sister is absolutely wrong, no debate there. But children didn't need to learn about their parents' marriage collapsing because of a dramatic dinner confrontation. You could have confronted her privately. You could have told Tom privately. You could have shut her down publicly without exposing the affair. You escalated because you were angry, which is understandable, but that doesn't make it right. NTA, this wasn't impulsive. This was self-defense. People are ignoring the fact that your sister had been slowly poisoning your relationship for months. She didn't respect your boundaries. She didn't respect your engagement. She didn't respect your fiancé. She felt entitled to him. That speech was her final attempt to stake a claim. You didn't start the fire. You exposed the gasoline she'd been soaking everyone in. Soft YTA. Not because your sister deserved protection, she didn't. But because this moment will define your family dynamic forever. Even if people secretly agree with you, they will always remember you as the one who blew it up. Sometimes justice comes with consequences we have to carry too. NTA and your parents' reaction tells you everything. They weren't angry about the cheating. They were angry about the embarrassment. That means image mattered more than integrity. You shattered the illusion, and that's what they're punishing you for. ESH but leaning NTA. The timing was brutal, yes. But your sister was actively trying to steal your fiancé emotionally while betraying her husband. That's not a mistake, that's a pattern. At some point, silence becomes complicity. Final verdict. NTA with consequences. You were provoked, you were disrespected, you were targeted. But the blast radius was massive, and some of the collateral damage will never fully heal. Next thread. AITA for uninviting my sister from my wedding after she told my fiancé something that changed everything. I never imagined I'd be writing one of these posts. I've read AITA for years. I know how messy they can get. I know how unreliable narrators work. I know people always say there's missing information. So I'm going to try to be as honest and thorough as possible, even when it makes me look bad. I am 29F. My fiancé, Daniel, is 31M. We've been together for 6 years and engaged for 4 months. My sister, Olivia, is 33F. Growing up, Olivia and I were described as close, but that word did a lot of heavy lifting. What it really meant was that we existed in the same space and learned early how not to step on each other's landmines. She was dramatic, emotional, expressive. I was quiet, observant, and learned very young that staying agreeable kept the peace. Our parents didn't play favorites openly, but the dynamic was obvious. Olivia's feelings were urgent. Mine were manageable. If she cried, the world stopped. If I was upset, I was mature for my age. That pattern followed us into adulthood. Still, when Daniel proposed, Olivia screamed, cried, hugged me, and told everyone she knew that her baby sister was finally getting married. She offered to help with everything: dress shopping, venue visits, guest list organization, even addressing invitations. At first it felt supportive, then it felt controlling. She had opinions about everything. She didn't like my dress because it was bridal enough. She didn't like our venue because it was too modern. She didn't like that Daniel and I weren't inviting certain extended family members. Anytime I disagreed, she'd sigh and say, "I just want your day to be perfect." I started second-guessing myself constantly. Daniel noticed before I did. He'd ask me why I looked stressed after talking to her. I'd brush it off and say wedding planning is just overwhelming. Then about 6 weeks ago, everything shifted. Daniel came home from work unusually quiet. He sat down at our kitchen table and said, "I need to tell you something, and I don't know how." My stomach dropped instantly. He told me that Olivia had asked him to meet her for coffee earlier that day. She said it was about a wedding surprise for me. He didn't think anything of it. According to Daniel, the conversation started normally. She talked about how excited she was for the wedding, how happy she was that I'd found him. Then she said something that felt off. She told him she wanted to check in and make sure he knew what he was getting into. She said I'm not good with confrontation. She said I shut down emotionally. She said I hold resentment quietly instead of addressing issues. Daniel admitted some of this sounded familiar because I've shared my flaws with him myself, but the way she framed it felt like a warning, not concern. Then she said this: "I just don't want you to wake up one day and realize you married someone who doesn't really need you." Daniel told me that sentence stayed with him all day. When he asked her what she meant, she laughed and said she was half joking, but then added that I've always been extremely independent and emotionally self-contained, sometimes to a fault. She told him that she has always been the emotional one in the family, the one who loves deeply, the one who feels everything. She said, "Sometimes I worry she doesn't love the way most people do." Daniel told me he defended me immediately. He told her that I love deeply, just differently, that our relationship works because we communicate and respect each other. According to him, Olivia smiled and said, "I hope so. I'd hate for either of you to get hurt." When he finished telling me all this, I didn't know what to say. Part of me was angry. Another part of me felt exposed. But the part that scared me the most was that tiny voice in my head whispering, "She's been planting seeds." I asked Daniel why he was telling me now. He hesitated, then said, "Because this isn't the first time she said something like this." Apparently, over the last few months, Olivia had been making small comments to him when I wasn't around, always framed as concern, always framed as humor, always just plausible enough to dismiss. I felt sick. I confronted Olivia the next day. I tried to stay calm. I told her Daniel mentioned their coffee meeting and asked her directly what her intention had been. She looked genuinely offended. She said I was overreacting. She said she was just being a protective sister. She said I should be grateful someone cares enough to be honest. Then she said something that changed how I saw everything. She said, "If you were more emotionally open, people wouldn't misunderstand you so much." That conversation ended badly. I left feeling small, angry, and confused. That night, Daniel asked me a question I wasn't prepared for. He asked, "Has your sister ever tried to compete with you?" I told him no. But the truth is, I didn't know. 3 days later, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. It was Olivia's ex-best friend, Hannah. And that message is where everything truly began to unravel. The message that made me realize this wasn't about my wedding at all. When I saw Hannah's name pop up on my phone, I honestly assumed it was spam or a wrong number. Hannah was Olivia's best friend from high school through most of college. They were inseparable. Sleepovers, matching tattoos, shared journals, the whole thing. When they stopped being friends about 5 years ago, it was sudden and dramatic, and Olivia never explained why. She just said Hannah was toxic and jealous. At the time, I believed her. Why wouldn't I? So when I opened the message and saw, "Hey, I know this is weird. I debated for a long time whether to reach out, but after what I heard recently, I don't feel right staying quiet anymore." My hands actually started shaking. I replied asking what she meant. She didn't respond for almost an hour. Then she sent a wall of text so long I had to scroll. She said she heard about my engagement through mutual friends. She congratulated me. Then she said there was something I needed to know, not because she wanted to hurt me, but because she wished someone had told her sooner. Then she dropped this sentence: "Your sister has a pattern, and you're standing exactly where I once stood." I sat on my couch and reread that line at least 10 times. I asked her to explain. Hannah told me that when Olivia was engaged to her ex-husband Mark, a man I barely knew and never liked, Olivia became obsessed with one idea, proving that she was chosen. At first, I didn't understand what that meant. Hannah explained that Olivia has always measured her worth through comparison, not strangers, specific people, people close enough to compete with. When Olivia and Mark started dating, Hannah was single and struggling. Olivia thrived on being the one who was settled, admired, envied. But when Hannah started dating someone serious, Olivia changed. She started questioning Hannah's relationship constantly, asking probing questions, making concerned comments, warning Hannah about potential red flags. Eventually, Hannah found out Olivia had been privately messaging her boyfriend. Framed as concern, framed as humor, framed as girl code. Sound familiar? According to Hannah, Olivia told him that Hannah had commitment issues, that she ran when things got real. that she wasn't emotionally stable enough for marriage. When Hannah confronted Olivia, she denied everything. A month later, Hannah's boyfriend broke up with her. He told her he just didn't feel secure. Hannah then told me something that made my chest go cold. She said Olivia admitted it years later, during a fight, and said, "I was just protecting you from someone who wasn't right for you. And honestly, if he was that easily influenced, he wasn't worth it." Hannah cut her off shortly after. She said she had stayed quiet because she thought Olivia had grown, changed, matured. But then she heard from a mutual friend that Olivia had been meeting my fiancé privately. Hannah said she felt sick. She told me she didn't know what Olivia's endgame was: attention, control, reassurance, but that it always followed the same pattern. Support publicly, undermine privately, play innocent when confronted. I put my phone down and stared at the wall. I didn't want to believe her, but everything suddenly made sense. The dress opinions, the constant "I just want what's best," the way Olivia seemed almost disappointed whenever Daniel and I made decisions without her. That night, I didn't tell Daniel what Hannah said. I just watched him. I watched how safe I felt with him, how open our communication had always been, how solid we were. And for the first time, I felt afraid that someone else was trying to step inside that space. 2 days later, the bridal shower happened. It was hosted by Olivia. I almost didn't go, but I told myself I was being paranoid, that confronting her without proof would only make me look unstable. That was a mistake. The shower started normally: games, gifts, laughter. Then Olivia stood up and tapped her glass. She said she wanted to give a speech. She talked about how proud she was of me, how she'd always taken care of me, how she'd watched me grow into the woman I am. Then she looked directly at Daniel and said, "She doesn't always say what she feels, but when she commits quietly and forever." Everyone smiled. I felt my stomach twist. Then she added, "And I hope you know how lucky you are, because she doesn't need anyone. She chooses you." The room laughed. Daniel didn't. That night in the car, he asked me why that comment bothered him so much. I told him everything. I told him about Hannah. I told him about the pattern. I told him I felt like Olivia was trying to define me for him. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he said something I'll never forget. "She talks about you like you're a concept, not a person." The next morning, Olivia texted me asking if everything was okay because I seemed off. I didn't respond. Instead, I asked Daniel a question that scared me to ask. I asked him if anything Olivia had said had made him doubt me. He told me the truth. He said no, but that he felt uncomfortable, and that if it had gone on longer it might have. That was enough. I called Olivia and told her she was no longer invited to the wedding. She laughed at first. Then she got very, very quiet. And then she said, "You're making a huge mistake." The meltdown, the receipts, and the moment my childhood rewrote itself. After I told Olivia she was no longer invited to the wedding, there was a long pause on the phone. I could hear her breathing. Then she laughed again, but this time it wasn't light or joking. It was sharp. She said, "So Hannah finally got to you." My heart dropped. I asked her how she knew about Hannah. She snapped back instantly, saying Hannah was obsessed, that she'd always been jealous of her, that she'd warned me years ago not to trust her. Then her tone changed. She told me I was being cruel. She told me I was humiliating her. She told me she had done everything for me my entire life. She said, "I made you who you are." That sentence hit harder than anything else she said. I told her I needed space. I told her I was done discussing it. She didn't let me. Within an hour, my phone started blowing up. My mom called first. She asked what was going on and why Olivia was sobbing uncontrollably at her house. I explained calmly. I told her about the coffee meeting, the comments, the pattern. Hannah. My mom sighed and said something I'd heard my entire life. She means well, she just worries. Then my dad texted. Then my aunt. Then my cousin. By that evening, the narrative had spread. According to Olivia, I was cutting her out over miscommunication. I was spiraling. I was projecting insecurity. Daniel was controlling me. That last one made my blood run cold. Daniel saw the texts coming in and asked what was happening. When I told him what Olivia was telling people, he didn't get angry. He got scared. Not for himself, for me. He asked me if this had happened before. And suddenly, memories I hadn't thought about in years started surfacing. Times Olivia spoke for me. Times she explained my feelings to others. Times I agreed with her version of events because it was easier than correcting her. I remembered being 14 and crying quietly in my room after a friend stopped talking to me. Olivia had told our parents that I just didn't care that much and was fine being alone. I remembered believing her. The next day, Hannah sent me screenshots. They were old, years old, but still devastating. Messages between Olivia and Hannah's ex. Concerned, friendly, subtle. She never outright trashed Hannah. She just framed her as fragile, inconsistent, hard to love. The language was eerily familiar. I showed Daniel. He went pale. Then something else happened. My mom came over unannounced. She sat at my kitchen table and asked me directly if Olivia had ever hurt me. I started to say no. Then I stopped. And for the first time in my life, I said, I don't know. That's when my mom told me something I wish she'd told me years ago. She told me that when we were kids, Olivia struggled deeply with insecurity. That she'd been in therapy briefly after elementary school because she felt invisible unless she was needed. That doctors had warned them that Olivia attached intensely and struggled when people formed independent bonds. My parents thought they were protecting me by letting Olivia look out for me. They didn't realize they were teaching her that my life was an extension of hers. My mom cried. She said she never thought it would go this far. That night, Olivia sent me one last message. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was chilling. She said, "You're choosing him over me, and I won't forget that." That was the moment I knew this wasn't about my wedding. It was about control. The next morning, I sent a message to my entire family. I explained everything. I attached screenshots. I stated clearly that Olivia was not welcome at the wedding and that this decision was final. I also said something I'd never said before. I said I was done being managed. The fallout was immediate. Half my family went silent. The other half exploded. And Olivia. She posted something on Facebook that made the entire situation public. The post that went viral, the lie that backfired, and the line she crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. I found out about the Facebook post from a coworker. She messaged me and said, "Hey, I don't know if you've seen what your sister posted, but people are talking." My stomach dropped. I opened Facebook and there it was. A long post, carefully written, emotional, just vague enough to invite sympathy, just specific enough to point fingers. She never used my name. She didn't need to. She wrote about being cut out by someone she had protected her whole life. She wrote about sacrificing her own happiness to support a sibling who never needed her until it was convenient. She wrote about being punished for caring too much. She ended it with, Some people don't realize how much love they've been given until they decide they don't need it anymore. Within minutes, the comments poured in. I watched them in real time. Family members I'd known my whole life commented heart emojis. Friends of hers wrote things like, "You deserve better," and some people don't know how lucky they are. One of my cousins commented, "Blood is blood." Then someone tagged Daniel. I felt sick. I called him immediately. He had already seen it. He told me he wasn't angry, but he was done. He said something I didn't realize I needed to hear. "This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a campaign." That night, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I commented. I didn't insult her. I didn't speculate. I didn't spiral. I posted screenshots. I posted the coffee meeting explanation. I posted Hannah's messages. I posted Olivia's text to me saying she made me who I am. And I wrote one paragraph. I said I loved my sister. I said I'd spent my life trying to keep peace. And I said I was done being spoken for. Then I logged out. The reaction was nuclear. People started deleting comments. Messages came flooding in: apology, shock, silence. My phone rang nonstop. But the moment that changed everything came the next morning. Olivia commented under my post. Just one sentence. She wrote, "If you hadn't always needed me, none of this would have happened." I physically shook. Because that wasn't just manipulation. That was rewriting my entire life. Daniel saw it and said, very quietly, "That's not love, that's ownership." My parents came over that afternoon. They looked exhausted. They told me Olivia had admitted something. She admitted she'd been afraid that once I got married, she'd lose her place in my life. She admitted she'd wanted to test Daniel to make sure he wouldn't replace her. I asked them why no one stopped her. My dad said, "We didn't realize she saw it as a competition." That night, Olivia tried to call me. I didn't answer. Instead, I sent her one final message. I told her I loved her. I told her I hoped she'd get help. And I told her she would not be part of my wedding or my life until she could respect that I am not hers to manage, protect, or control. She never replied. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Half my family isn't coming. The other half is. I'm grieving a sister who's still alive. And I keep asking myself the question everyone keeps asking me. AITA for uninviting my sister from my wedding after realizing she was trying to sabotage my relationship. The wedding day, the last move she made, and the verdict I never expected. The morning of my wedding was quiet. Too quiet. I woke up before my alarm and just lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting for the anxiety to hit. It didn't. What I felt instead was sadness, a deep, heavy grief for something I'd already lost. My phone was face down on the nightstand. I hadn't blocked Olivia, not because I wanted to hear from her, but because I didn't want her to be able to say I'd shut her out without warning. At 9:12 a.m. it buzzed. One message. From her. It said, "I'm outside." My heart slammed into my throat. I sat up so fast I felt dizzy. I called my mom immediately. She swore Olivia wasn't supposed to come. She promised she hadn't told her where I was getting ready. 5 minutes later, another text came through. "I just want to see you before everything changes forever." Daniel was in another building getting ready. I didn't tell him. Not yet. I didn't want panic to bleed into what little peace we had left. I told my maid of honor. She went pale and immediately said she'd handle it. Before she could leave, another message appeared. "You owe me 5 minutes, after everything I've done for you." That sentence snapped something in me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel scared of her reaction. I felt tired of it. I replied, "No, please leave. If you don't, I'll have security remove you." There was no response. 10 minutes passed. Then my mom burst into the room, shaking. She said Olivia had shown up at the venue instead. She hadn't caused a scene, not yet. She was crying, quietly, telling anyone who would listen that she just wanted to wish her sister luck. Security asked if they should escort her out. I said yes. And that's when she made her final move. As she was being walked out, she handed my mom an envelope. She said, "Give this to her. She deserves to know the truth before she says her vows." My mom didn't want to give it to me. I told her I needed to see it. Inside was a single printed email. From years ago. From Daniel. Sent to Olivia. Before we were engaged. Before I ever knew they'd met privately. The email wasn't flirty. It wasn't inappropriate. It was worse. It was vulnerable. He'd written that he was nervous about proposing, that he was afraid of messing up, that he wanted to be good enough for me. And Olivia had responded. She told him he needed to be careful. She told him I tended to lose myself in relationships. She told him she worried I relied too much on others for stability. She ended with, "I just want to make sure you're prepared for what you're taking on." I sat there in my wedding dress, staring at that page. And then something unexpected happened. I felt relief. Because the truth was finally complete. Daniel hadn't been manipulated. He hadn't hidden it. He hadn't doubted me. He'd chosen me anyway. I walked into the ceremony steady. I told Daniel everything afterward. He didn't defend himself. He apologized for not telling me sooner, not because he'd done something wrong, but because he didn't realize how deep this went. We got married. It was beautiful. It was imperfect. It was ours. Olivia didn't come. She hasn't contacted me since. Some family members say I overreacted. Some say I saved myself years of quiet control. Some say I should forgive her because she's my sister. But here's what I know. Love doesn't require ownership. Protection doesn't mean sabotage. And family doesn't get unlimited access to your life just because you share blood. So Reddit AITA for cutting my sister out of my wedding and possibly my life after realizing she saw me as something she owned. Someone commented on this saying, "NTA, and I want to be extremely clear about something because a lot of people in the comments are still understating what happened here. This was not overprotectiveness. This was not sibling jealousy. This was not fear of abandonment. This was emotional ownership. Your sister didn't see you as a separate adult with autonomy. She saw you as an extension of herself, something she managed, curated, and controlled. That's why every milestone in your life became a threat instead of a celebration. The moment you started forming an identity that didn't revolve around her, she panicked. And the most telling part, the timing. She didn't show up to support you. She didn't show up to apologize. She didn't show up to repair anything. She showed up to destabilize you right before your vows. That envelope wasn't about honesty. It was about leverage. If she truly cared about your well-being, that email would have been shared years ago in a calm, private conversation. Instead, she saved it like a grenade and pulled the pin when she realized she was losing control permanently. People who love you don't test your partner. People who love you don't sabotage your confidence. People who love you don't rewrite your childhood to make themselves the hero. You didn't cut her out because of one incident. You cut her out because you finally saw the pattern clearly enough that you couldn't unsee it. Anyone telling you that you overreacted, is prioritizing family comfort over your psychological safety. You didn't choose your husband over your sister. You chose yourself. Another said, I need everyone saying, but she was just scared of losing you, to stop romanticizing behavior that would be considered abusive in literally any other relationship dynamic. If this were a romantic partner, isolating you emotionally, undermining your relationships, speaking for you, controlling the narrative, testing your loyalty, we would call it coercive control without hesitation. But because it's a sister, suddenly we're supposed to see it as love. No, fear of abandonment does not justify manipulation. Insecurity does not justify sabotage. Mental health struggles do not excuse harm. The email sealed it for me. She framed you as a burden to your own fiancé. That's not concern. That's character assassination disguised as care. And the fact that she thought handing you that letter on your wedding day would make you come running back to her tells me she truly believed she still owned your emotional center. That's terrifying. Cutting her off wasn't cruel, it was necessary. This user also commented saying, your parents failed both of you. They failed your sister by enabling her dependency instead of insisting she develop her own identity. They failed you by allowing someone else to define your emotions, your conflicts, and your narrative for decades. Letting her look out for you turned into letting her run you. And now everyone is shocked that it escalated into emotional warfare during your wedding. This didn't come out of nowhere, it was just finally visible. I'm glad your parents eventually acknowledged it, but the damage was already done by then. You're not obligated to sacrifice your adulthood to maintain the illusion of family harmony. Families don't get healed by pretending nothing happened. They get healed by accountability. You chose accountability. Another said, the most disturbing part of this entire story is the sentence. If you hadn't always needed me, none of this would have happened. That is a confession. She wasn't saying she helped you because you needed it. She was saying she needed you to need her. That's the core issue. Once you stopped needing her, she tried to make you doubt yourself, your partner, and your choices so you'd regress back into dependence. That's not love. That's self-preservation at someone else's expense. Walking away was the healthiest thing you could have done. Someone also said, I'm honestly impressed by how calmly and clearly you handled this once the truth came out. You didn't scream. You didn't retaliate. You didn't drag her publicly until she forced your hand. You set boundaries, enforced consequences, and protected your relationship. That's not being dramatic. That's being emotionally mature. Anyone saying, but she's your sister, needs to remember that being related doesn't entitle someone to unrestricted access to your life, your partner, or your milestones. Blood doesn't override consent. Final verdict, NTA, not the AHOLE. After reviewing the original post, the extensive updates, and thousands of community responses, the consensus is overwhelmingly clear. Up is not the asshole. This situation was never about a single argument, a misunderstood intention, or one badly timed decision. It was the culmination of years of blurred boundaries, emotional dependency, and unchecked control that finally came to a head at one of the most emotionally significant moments of Op's life. While the sister framed her actions as concern and protection, the community widely agrees that what she demonstrated was emotional manipulation disguised as love. True concern prioritizes communication, timing, and respect. What occurred instead was a calculated attempt to destabilize Op's confidence, undermine her relationship, and reassert emotional dominance at the exact moment Op was stepping into a new chapter of independence. The act of withholding information for years, then delivering it in the form of an emotionally loaded letter on the wedding day was not accidental. It was not protective. It was strategic, and intent matters. Many commenters also pointed out that Op's response was notably restrained. She did not publicly shame her sister. She did not lash out in retaliation, and she did not attempt to turn the family against her. Instead, she made the difficult but necessary decision to step back from someone who had repeatedly demonstrated an inability to respect boundaries or autonomy. Family ties do not grant immunity from accountability. The community also places partial responsibility on the parents, whose long-term enabling of the sisters' behavior allowed this dynamic to escalate unchecked. However, that context does not negate the sister's agency or responsibility for her actions. Ultimately, Op did not choose a partner over family. She chose emotional safety over manipulation. She chose honesty over control. She chose growth over guilt. And that choice is valid. Reddit overwhelmingly agrees that setting boundaries, even permanent ones, is not cruelty when those boundaries are a response to sustained emotional harm. Verdict stands NTA. Next thread. AITA for uninviting my sister from my wedding after discovering what she did with our inheritance. Throwaway because several people involved use Reddit, and I'm honestly not ready for this to blow back on me in real life. I also apologize in advance because this is long, but context matters here, and I feel like if I don't explain everything from the beginning, I'm going to sound insane. I 29F. I'm getting married in 4 months to my fiancé, Daniel, 31M. We've been together for almost 6 years, engaged for 1, and planning what we thought was a relatively calm, joyful wedding. I also have an older sister, Claire, 33F. Growing up, it was always me and Claire versus the world. That's how everyone framed it, at least. Our dad died when I was 9 and she was 13, and our mom never really recovered emotionally. She worked, she paid bills, she showed up physically, but Claire became the emotional center of the family almost overnight. She helped raise me. She helped with homework. She made dinners when mom couldn't. Everyone told me how lucky I was to have a sister like her, and I believed it. I genuinely did. But looking back now, there were cracks I didn't recognize at the time. Claire was intense, protective to the point of suffocating. She always spoke for me. If someone asked me a question, she answered first. If I had a problem, she solved it, whether I wanted her to or not. If I disagreed with her, she'd say things like, "You're just emotional," or "You'll understand when you're older." She didn't do it cruelly. That's important. It always came wrapped in concern. When I got into college out of town, she cried for days. When I moved in with roommates instead of staying at home, she accused them of being a bad influence. When I started dating Daniel, she interrogated him like he was applying for security clearance. Daniel noticed it before I did. He once asked me, very gently, "Does your sister usually make decisions for you?" I laughed it off. I wish I hadn't. The inheritance. Our grandmother passed away 3 years ago. She wasn't wealthy, but she was careful with money and owned her house outright. After everything was settled, my sister and I each received just under 6 figures. Not life-changing money, but enough to matter. Claire insisted we talk strategy. She said things like, "You don't want to blow this. I've already talked to a financial advisor. It makes sense for me to manage things since I'm older." I was hesitant, but again, this was my sister, the person who had always handled things. So I agreed to let the money sit temporarily in an account she helped set up, with the understanding that we'd split it formally once I decided what I wanted to do with mine. I know, please don't yell at me yet. At the time, I was finishing grad school, overwhelmed, and honestly relieved to not have to deal with it immediately. That was my first mistake. Fast forward to wedding planning. When Daniel proposed, Claire was odd. She congratulated us, hugged me, smiled, but then immediately launched into logistics, guest lists, budgets, venues. She asked if we were sure about the timeline. She asked if we'd considered waiting another year. Then she started inserting herself everywhere. She wanted to come to dress fittings. She wanted to help with vendor emails. She told me my color palette felt juvenile. She suggested I change my venue because it was too far for family, despite it being 20 minutes away. Daniel started getting uncomfortable. He told me, again gently, "It feels like she's planning the wedding she would want, not the one you want." I defended her again. "She just cares," I said. "She's always been like this," I said. "It's easier to let her help," I said. The first red flag. 2 months ago, Daniel and I sat down to finalize our wedding budget. We wanted to pay for most of it ourselves, but I planned to use part of my inheritance to cover the venue deposit and catering. I logged into the account. Or tried to. My password didn't work. I texted Claire, assuming it was a technical issue. She didn't respond for hours. When she finally did, she said, "Oh yeah, I moved things around a bit. Don't worry about it." That sentence made my stomach drop. I asked her what she meant. She called me instead of texting. She told me, casually, that she had moved the funds into a longer-term investment account for my own good, because she didn't think using the money for a wedding was responsible. I laughed at first because it sounded absurd. Then I realized she was serious. She told me I'd thank her later. She told me weddings are temporary but financial stability is forever. She told me she was protecting me from myself. I asked her how much of the money she moved. She hesitated. Then she said, "All of it." Things start not adding up. I demanded access to the account. She resisted, said it would take time, said I was overreacting, said Daniel was getting in my head. That comment lit something in me I had never felt before. I insisted hard. 3 days later, she finally sent me partial statements. That's when I realized something was very, very wrong. The balance was not what it should have been. Not even close. At first, I thought I was misunderstanding. I went through the statements line by line, transfers I didn't recognize, withdrawals labeled vaguely, payments that had nothing to do with investments. One charge stopped me cold. It was for a venue. A wedding venue. Not mine. The realization. I Googled it. It was booked for a date 6 months before my wedding. In Claire's name. I confronted her that night. She didn't deny it. She told me she had gotten engaged recently and hadn't told me yet because she didn't want to stress me out. She said she used part of the inheritance as a deposit because it made sense, since we're family, and she planned to even things out later. When I asked her how much she took, she said, "It's not taking if it's temporary." When I asked her why she didn't ask me, she said, "You would have said no." That was the moment something finally shattered for me. She didn't see the money as mine. She didn't see the wedding as mine. She didn't even see me as separate from her. Where it gets worse. When I told her I wanted my money returned immediately, she got angry. Not defensive, angry. She accused me of being ungrateful. She reminded me of everything she'd done for me growing up. She said I was choosing Daniel over my real family. She said I was being selfish and short-sighted. Then she said something I can't stop thinking about. "If you hadn't always needed me, none of this would have happened." I told her she was no longer welcome at my wedding. She laughed. She said, "You'll cool off." She told our mother. Now my mom is crying daily. Extended family is calling me heartless. Claire told people I'm having a breakdown and that Daniel is controlling me financially. And last night, I received an email from Claire. Attached was a letter, addressed to Daniel, dated 3 years ago. I haven't opened it yet. The letter. So last night, I finally opened the email from Claire. I had been putting it off because I was terrified of what she might have done. The subject line read, "For Daniel, for protection, confidential." My hands were shaking as I clicked it. Inside was a single PDF attachment, dated 3 years ago, titled, "Family Matters and Financial Responsibility, Please Read." I opened it, and it was surreal. What the letter said, verbatim summary. Claire addressed Daniel directly, which immediately struck me as bizarre and controlling. The letter started with a long, almost poetic preamble about family, legacy, and responsibility. It said, in essence, "Daniel, I understand that you are in a relationship with my sister. I respect that. But you must understand that I, Claire, am the steward of this family's well-being. I am aware of your financial situation, your decision-making tendencies, and your ability to care for her in moments of pressure. For her sake, I have taken proactive measures to ensure that any inheritance she receives will be handled in a way that does not jeopardize her security. I trust you to respect this. Know that I have used some of these funds for strategic investments that may include, but are not limited to, real estate and temporary deposits. These are not misappropriations but preventative actions to secure her future." At first, I thought I was reading corporate speak written by a con artist. Then it got worse. The revelation. Halfway through the letter, Claire admitted to booking a venue for herself and a friend, not me, then included a full itinerary of the wedding she had planned for herself and a fiancé who apparently didn't exist yet. She wrote, "I have made these reservations because it is crucial to establish a precedent of responsibility and control. Should there be disputes, she must understand the consequences of mismanagement." The tone was almost psychopathic, like she believed she had the moral authority to orchestrate every major financial decision in my life without consulting me. There were spreadsheets attached, detailed spreadsheets. Every dollar of the inheritance was tracked. Every temporary transfer was documented. Every investment was justified. And in the corner of each spreadsheet was a small note, "For your protection always." The threats. It got dark fast. The letter ended with, "If my authority is questioned, or if you, Daniel, encourage her to act against my decisions, there will be repercussions. These repercussions will be financial, social, and familial. Consider this your warning and her opportunity to obey wisdom she may not yet comprehend." So she basically threatened my fiancé, my future husband, over money that is legally mine. I read it 3 times, then I threw up a little in my mouth. My response. I confronted Claire via text. I didn't call, didn't even want to hear her voice. I typed, "You have no right to threaten Daniel. You have no right to take my money or book venues in my name. You are not in charge of my life." Her reply came 2 hours later. "You don't understand. I'm keeping you safe. You'll thank me one day. Until then, you can either accept my protection or alienate yourself from your family. Choose wisely." Current situation. My mother is crying daily, telling me I'm breaking the family apart. My father, divorced but still influential in family matters, called me reckless and ungrateful. Extended family has started taking sides, some calling me a victim, some calling me too dramatic. Claire is now publicly telling people I'm unhinged and ignoring wisdom. Daniel is furious but supportive. He says he will never let her threaten him or our marriage, but he's worried about legal complications with the inheritance. I feel completely isolated. This is the person I loved and trusted more than anyone, the person who helped raise me. I don't know how to proceed. I feel like I'm standing in the middle of a war I never asked to be in, and the soldiers are my own family. I want my money back. I want her banned from the wedding. I want to protect Daniel, but I also fear the long-term fallout. Reddit AITA for planning to legally remove Claire from any control over the inheritance and uninvite her from the wedding after discovering her threats and manipulations. Because right now, I feel like I'm in a horror movie. Reddit explodes. After posting the story to RAMI the asshole, the thread blew up within minutes. By the next morning, it had 12,000 upvotes and over 1,500 comments. People were dissecting every word of Claire's letter, debating my ethical responsibility, and questioning family dynamics. Here's a breakdown of the most notable comments. They're long, detailed, and juicy. Comment 1: NTA, the legal eagle. NTA first. Let's address the legal side because this is nuts. You are legally entitled to your inheritance. Anything Claire has done in your name without your consent can be considered fraud, embezzlement, or even coercion depending on how the money was moved. Her protective actions are irrelevant in court. Threatening you and Daniel financially is blackmail. I would immediately consult a lawyer specializing in inheritance and family law. Freeze any accounts she might have touched. Document every email, text, and spreadsheet. Take screenshots. This is evidence. Second, the psychological side. Claire is exhibiting classic control and manipulation tactics. Threatening, gaslighting, and using moralistic language to justify extreme behavior. She is treating your autonomy as a negotiation, which is not normal. Third, your family dynamics are typical of families with a golden child syndrome. Claire has been positioned as the moral gatekeeper, and the rest of the family enables her. You are now seen as the rebellious child for daring to question the authority. This is standard in cases where someone has exerted power for decades. Actionable advice. Consult a lawyer and get a restraining order if necessary. Inform Daniel that he must avoid any financial or legal agreements with Claire without your presence. Consider setting very firm boundaries, uninviting her from the wedding, blocking her communication, and publicly clarifying your stance to prevent further manipulation. This is extreme. You are not the asshole for defending yourself and your fiancé from emotional and financial abuse. Comment 2: YTA, the family loyalty argument. I feel compelled to play devil's advocate even though I personally think NTA. Here's the issue. Claire genuinely believes she is protecting you. Some people, especially older siblings, take on the role of family guardian because they see patterns of potential harm. She might have been overbearing and controlling, but in her mind, she's safeguarding your inheritance. So yes, legally and ethically, she is wrong to threaten, but morally, some would argue that her actions, though misguided, come from a place of care. The question is, do you want to escalate and destroy family ties, or do you want to redefine boundaries without total alienation? That said, you're within your rights to act. I just caution that burning bridges might have irreversible consequences, especially if your family is going to rally behind her. Comment 3: Psychological analysis. In TA, let's break down Claire's behavior psychologically. I'm not a therapist, but these are clear red flags. Control freak syndrome. She inserted herself into financial and social aspects of your life without consent. Classic controlling behavior. Gaslighting. She frames her illegal actions as protection, making you question whether your feelings are justified. Triangulation. She involves your parents, extended family, and even potentially Daniel indirectly to isolate you. Threats masquerading as concern. Every spreadsheet, every note is a threat veiled in moral language. She's using psychological leverage to force obedience. If she were a colleague or acquaintance, you'd already be considering legal action. The only difference here is that family complicates the emotional context. Comment 4: Daniel speaks up. Daniel, a throwaway commenter here. I've been lurking, and I want to clarify my perspective. I have no intention of letting Claire threaten either of us. Financial or emotional manipulation is a hard deal breaker. I told Op last night, we will fight her if necessary. This is our life, not her morality play. I have already looked up laws about inheritance interference. There are protections in every state against this kind of behavior. If Claire tries to meddle legally, she will regret it. We're not going to escalate unnecessarily, but Op is completely justified in taking legal steps and uninviting her from the wedding. Comment 5. Extended Family's POV. I'm from a family like this, NTA. But let me tell you how this looks from outside. Family members who side with Claire are usually enablers, often because they've benefited from her authority or simply fear confrontation. They might be telling Op she's overreacting or being dramatic. Ignore them. Most of the time, they are not thinking rationally, they are thinking emotionally, and Claire has trained them to respond in her favor. If Op wants peace of mind, she has two options. Cut Claire completely out and be prepared for family backlash. Set boundaries and let Claire know there are consequences if she crosses them again. I personally vote option 1. Comment 7. Redditor with similar experience. In TA, I lived through this. My aunt tried to control my inheritance and even manipulated my fiancé through threats. It got to the point where I had to hire a lawyer and disown family members who sided with her. The fallout was brutal, but the peace of mind was worth it. Protect yourself. Don't let guilt or family pressure force you to tolerate emotional abuse. Summary of Part 3. By the end of the day, Reddit overwhelmingly sided with me, and legal advice was unanimous. Consult a lawyer immediately. Psychological analysis confirmed. Claire is manipulative, controlling, and threatening. Family drama is escalating. Some family members are taking Claire's side, others mine. Daniel is fully supportive and ready to take action. Claire strikes back. After my original post went viral on Reddit, things escalated faster than I could have imagined. By the morning of the third day, Claire had apparently realized the internet wasn't on her side, or so she thought. She decided to strike back, and she did so in a way that was utterly shocking. Claire's version goes live. I woke up to dozens of notifications on my phone. My inbox, texts, social media, all flooded with links. Apparently, Claire had posted her own detailed account of the situation, framing herself as the wronged older sibling and casting me as an ungrateful, entitled brat who was trying to sabotage the family legacy. Her post claimed that I had been irresponsible with money and couldn't be trusted to handle inheritance or family property. That Daniel and I were conspiring to cut her out of our lives unfairly. That my actions toward her had caused her immense emotional stress, including migraines and insomnia. That my decision to uninvite her from the wedding was cruel and unnecessarily dramatic. She also included screenshots of our family group chats, selectively edited to make her look like the victim and me like the villain. Some messages were taken completely out of context, and she even added captions suggesting I had admitted to hatting her and wanting to ruin her life. The internet predictably exploded. Reddit reacts to Claire's version. The moment her post hit, the thread on Am I the Asshole ballooned to 25,000 comments. People were furious, not at me, but at how manipulative Claire's post was. Here's a selection of the most detailed, juicy, and intense responses. Comment 1. NTA the fact checker. NTA, let's pause and analyze this logically. Claire selectively edited messages to make herself look like the victim. She used screenshots as propaganda. This is textbook gaslighting. It's literally the same technique manipulative partners or controlling siblings use to rewrite history and control public perception. Every claim she made can be refuted with timestamps, original messages, and context. Redditors, I would advise OP to keep all original evidence, as this can not only discredit Claire online, but also serve as legal evidence if she escalates further. Bottom line, she is trying to manipulate public opinion. That does not make you wrong, it makes her desperate. Comment 2. The legal scholar speaks. NTA. From a legal perspective, Claire's actions could constitute defamation, publishing false statements about you that harm your reputation. Emotional distress, deliberate manipulation intended to cause anxiety or psychological harm. Harassment, multiple attempts to engage the public and sway them against you. Document everything. Don't engage in public arguments. Let her dig her own hole. Lawyers can handle the rest. This is more serious than a sibling feud. It's a potential legal minefield for her. Comment 3. Psychological analysis extended. Let's dissect Claire's behavior. Projection. She accuses you of entitlement while she is literally trying to control your life. Selective memory and editing, only including messages that suit her narrative. Public manipulation, posting online to gain allies while isolating you emotionally. Victim card escalation. Every minor grievance she felt gets amplified into a life-ruining event. This is emotional warfare, not a family disagreement. Recognizing it as such is crucial. Protect your mental health and don't respond emotionally. Comment 4. Redditor with similar sibling issues. NTA. I've been in almost the exact same situation. Older sibling tried to rewrite history, get the family on their side, and even threaten legal action. What I did: collected all evidence in a secure location. Stopped communicating except through lawyers or documented channels. Blocked the sibling from social media. Continued my life without engaging in public drama. Within a few months, the truth became obvious. People realized who was lying. It's hard, but patience and documentation are your best weapons. Comment 5. The marriage advice angle. Daniel and Op need to present a united front. Claire is attempting to drive a wedge. Her narrative about emotional distress is manipulative. Ignore it publicly. Keep your communication private. Don't give her the satisfaction of seeing you react. Regarding the wedding, nothing she posts online changes your right to set boundaries and protect your mental health. She is not entitled to your life events, and you are under no obligation to tolerate abuse just because she calls it family concern. Comment 6. Extended family commentary. Reading her post, a few things become clear. The extended family may take her side because she is dramatic and emotionally persuasive. Many will reflexively defend the older sibling, even if objectively she is wrong. You must accept that some family relationships may be damaged permanently if she continues this strategy. Ultimately, the key is control what you can control: your finances, your wedding, your life with Daniel. Let the public and family see the truth unfold over time. Reddit verdict at this stage. At this point, Reddit's consensus was overwhelmingly in favor of NTA, but there were discussions about long-term family consequences. Block Claire online. Do not engage publicly. Document everything. Legal consultation recommended. Mental health support strongly advised. The explosive family meeting. After Claire's post went viral, the tension in my family reached a breaking point. My parents were calling constantly. Daniel was stressing over every new message, and even distant relatives had started weighing in. It became clear that something had to be done, a face-to-face family meeting. But little did we know, this meeting would turn into one of the most chaotic, jaw-dropping confrontations of my life. Setting the stage. We arranged to meet at my parents' house, a neutral location, or so we thought. Claire arrived first, already simmering with indignation. She had printed copies of her post, screenshots, and even a typed timeline of events that painted me as an ungrateful, manipulative sibling. My parents looked torn, visibly distressed but still trying to maintain neutrality. Daniel and I arrived shortly after, fully prepared to stay calm, factual, and focused. Claire's opening salvo. Claire didn't waste a second. She slammed the printouts on the table and announced, "I've been completely humiliated by the internet and my own family. She has lied about everything, her money, her relationships, her intentions. I've had to defend myself publicly because she refuses to admit she's wrong. And now, you all are letting her get away with it." Her voice was rising and her face was red. She was clearly performing for an audience, as if the presence of family was a live recording. My response. I took a deep breath and calmly said, "Claire, I am not lying about anything. Every decision I've made has been communicated to you directly when necessary. Your public post distorted reality and tried to manipulate our family into taking sides. That is unacceptable." I kept my voice steady, refusing to escalate. Daniel nodded beside me, silently reinforcing my statement with presence and support. The family explodes. As soon as I spoke, the room erupted into chaos. "Mom, but Claire's been crying. She said she feels attacked." "Dad, why are you both yelling at each other in front of the whole family?" "Aunt, I can't believe you go online instead of talking to your sister." Claire pointed to the printouts and shouted, "These are facts. She spent thousands, manipulated the family, and now she's trying to make me look like the bad one." At this point, cousins and uncles who had come to watch the drama unfold started weighing in, taking sides and repeating Claire's narrative. I realized this was no longer about the truth. It was about who could perform the best victimhood in front of an audience. The moment of truth. I stood, trying to regain control of the room. "Everyone, please listen. This is not a performance. Claire deliberately misrepresented events to make herself look like the victim and me the villain. I've saved every message, every email, every receipt. Everything can prove my side of the story. This is about facts, not feelings. I will not be manipulated or gaslit in my own family." For a few seconds, the room went silent. The tension was palpable. Claire loses control. Claire, realizing her performance wasn't swaying everyone as she hoped, completely lost it. She started yelling over everyone, claiming I was a liar, a manipulator, and destroying the family. At this moment, my uncle, who had stayed quiet until now, spoke up. "Enough, I've been listening to both sides. Claire, you've escalated this online and now here. It's time to stop. You are causing chaos in everyone's lives and this isn't healthy." This was a turning point. Several relatives who had been neutral or mildly sympathetic toward Claire began seeing the pattern of her manipulative behavior. Daniel's intervention. Daniel, who had been calm the entire time, stepped forward. "Claire, this isn't just between you and Op. You're trying to control everyone's perception of reality. We are prepared to show the evidence of your distortions. Your posts are not only hurtful but dangerous. This stops now." He laid out a timeline of messages and receipts, countering every major point Claire had made. The family slowly began to understand the truth. Claire had tried to weaponize social media against her own sibling. The fallout. By the end of the meeting, Claire was visibly shaken, realizing that her narrative had fallen apart under scrutiny. My parents were conflicted, but started to acknowledge that Claire had escalated things unnecessarily. The rest of the family was in shock at the level of manipulation they hadn't seen before. Claire left the house in tears, muttering about injustice, while Daniel and I quietly discussed next steps for protecting our lives and privacy. Reddit reacts. When we posted a summary of the meeting online, the thread exploded again. Commenters praised our calm, evidence-based approach. Many called Claire's behavior textbook gaslighting. Legal advice and mental health support flooded in. Hundreds of Redditors debated the ethics of family, loyalty versus personal boundaries. Some highlights. Comment 1 and TA, evidence is everything. The way you documented everything, stayed calm, and refused to let Claire manipulate the narrative publicly is exactly how situations like this should be handled. Family loyalty doesn't require you to tolerate abuse. Comment 2, gaslighting expert. Claire attempted to weaponize social perception and social media against you. This is textbook gaslighting and triangulation. You responded appropriately by presenting the facts and refusing to engage in emotional theatrics. Comment 3, long-term family dynamics. What you're seeing here is a pattern of manipulation. Siblings like Claire often escalate conflicts to the public eye to gain sympathy and force compliance. This is not about a disagreement anymore. It's about control, power, and influence over family perception. Cliffhanger ending. The explosive family meeting marked a turning point. Claire was now aware that her tactics would no longer work. Our family began to reevaluate their loyalties and approach to her manipulations. Daniel and I were finally ready to take concrete steps to protect our life together. Redditors were actively following every new twist, predicting even juicier confrontations at the wedding itself. The wedding day confrontation. The day of Claire's wedding had finally arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable. Ever since the explosive family meeting, we had been walking on eggshells, unsure if Claire would attempt another public spectacle, or worse, sabotage the day. Daniel and I had spent the week preparing mentally, setting boundaries, and strategizing on how to handle her theatrics without giving her the satisfaction of a reaction. Little did we know, this would become one of the most chaotic, jaw-dropping, and utterly unforgettable events in family drama history. Arrival and initial shock. We arrived at the venue early, fully aware that Claire was already there, making grand entrances and subtly flaunting her social media presence. Photographers and videographers were documenting everything, and Claire made it clear that every interaction would be captured, clearly intending to portray herself as the victim again. The first shock came when we noticed a wall of guests holding phones, live streaming parts of the ceremony rehearsal. Claire had coordinated it herself, ensuring that any misstep on our part could be broadcast instantly. I leaned toward Daniel and whispered, "This is going to be chaos. Just stay calm and follow the plan." Daniel nodded, gripping my hand, his eyes scanning for allies among the relatives who had begun questioning Claire's behavior. The ceremony begins. The ceremony itself was beautifully arranged, but Claire's subtle manipulations began immediately. She arranged seating so that her supporters were surrounding us, attempting to isolate us socially. She handed out printed copies of her social media posts to her friends and extended family, framing me as the antagonist. Multiple, coincidental interactions were staged, designed to force a confrontation in front of witnesses. Despite all this, Daniel and I kept our composure, staying out of the line of fire and only addressing issues when absolutely necessary. The first confrontation. Midway through the pre-wedding photos, Claire approached me directly, glaring, and began a tirade. "You think you can humiliate me online, destroy my reputation, and just show up here like nothing happened? You have no idea how much you've ruined this day for everyone." I calmly replied, "Claire, your day does not require me to play along with your manipulations. You chose to involve the public and weaponize social media. This is not my responsibility." Her eyes widened. The audience of onlookers clearly anticipated a dramatic scream fest. When I didn't give her the reaction she wanted, she pivoted, turning to the nearby guests and exclaiming, "Can you believe this? My own sibling thinks she can control me." The room fell silent. Several relatives looked confused, trying to piece together conflicting narratives. Daniel intervenes. Daniel stepped forward, exuding calm authority. Claire, your attempt to manipulate the story and this day is obvious. The only person controlling their behavior here is me and my partner. Your drama stops now. Several cousins quietly nodded, realizing that Daniel's approach was fact-based, not emotional, and that Claire's theatrics were losing credibility. The unexpected ally. At this critical moment, one of Claire's closest friends, Maya, approached us. She had previously supported Claire online, but had seen the full pattern of manipulation unfold over the past few weeks. Maya whispered to me, "I didn't realize how much she was spinning everything. I can't support this anymore. You have the facts, you've stayed calm, you're in the right." This was a turning point. Not only did Claire lose a key ally, but the tide of the room began shifting subtly. Several relatives who were previously on her side started questioning her motives and behavior. The public humiliation. The most dramatic moment came when Claire attempted to call me out in front of the photographer and videographer. She stepped forward during the ceremonial lineup and declared, "I just want everyone to know what my sister has done behind the scenes." Before she could finish, Daniel calmly interjected, "Claire, if you want to make this a public spectacle, go ahead. But know that your posts, your manipulations, and your lies are all documented. This will not go unchallenged." The photographer, sensing tension, hesitated. Several of the bridesmaids and family members whispered in shock, realizing Claire's attempt to control the narrative was unraveling. The room collectively exhaled, and the energy shifted. Claire's expression morphed from anger to panic. She realized she could no longer dominate the narrative or force us to react. The aftermath. By the end of the ceremony, Claire was quiet for the first time all day, visibly shaken by losing social influence. My parents were apologetic but cautious, realizing that we had navigated the situation with dignity and control. Guests were whispering about the drama, some praising Daniel and me for staying composed. Social media posts by onlookers began reflecting a more balanced story, countering Claire's earlier manipulations. Reddit reactions. The wedding confrontation was shared online in a summary thread, and it immediately exploded. Comment 1 NTA Tactical Mastery. You and your partner displayed impeccable crisis management. Claire attempted a public spectacle, weaponized social media, and tried to force a narrative. You countered with facts, calm demeanor, and support from unexpected allies. This is textbook boundary enforcement. Comment 2 Gaslighting gone wrong. Claire's behavior illustrates extreme emotional manipulation. She orchestrated public humiliation, leveraged social perception, and attempted to control multiple family members. You handled it perfectly, showing how to stand up to gaslighting without escalating. Comment 3 Family Dynamics 101. What we witnessed here is a masterclass in handling manipulative family members. Social media amplifies every conflict, but your restraint and preparation allowed the truth to prevail. Claire's tactics failed because she underestimated your composure and support network. Cliffhanger ending. The wedding day ended, but the story was far from over. Claire had retreated, vowing online revenge, but her credibility had suffered. Daniel and I had solidified our position in the family hierarchy, earning trust from previously skeptical relatives. Redditors were eagerly awaiting the next update, anticipating whether Claire would escalate, apologize, or attempt further manipulation. Part 7 The Epic Finale and Verdict. After the explosive wedding confrontation, the weeks that followed were nothing short of extraordinary. The fallout from Claire's manipulations, our public defense, and the family's slow reckoning created a situation that would keep Reddit buzzing for months. Immediate fallout. Claire retreated to her home, posting sporadically on social media with cryptic messages about betrayal, family, and loyalty. However, her posts were met with skepticism because Multiple wedding guests had already shared unbiased videos and photos that contradicted her narrative. Maya, once Claire's ally, publicly supported our account, describing Claire's actions as manipulative. Several relatives began questioning Claire's credibility, noting her pattern of dramatic overreactions. Meanwhile, my parents scheduled a family meeting to address the situation calmly. Unlike previous attempts, this meeting focused on recognizing Claire's behavior as manipulative and toxic, apologizing for failing to see the pattern earlier, establishing clear boundaries and communication guidelines for future family interactions. Daniel and I remained calm, presenting evidence of social media posts, timelines, and documented interactions. The family was shocked by the extent of Claire's manipulations, but grateful for our restraint. Claire attempts social media retaliation. Not content with private damage control, Claire attempted public narrative control. She posted a detailed timeline claiming I had humiliated her in front of family and guests. She shared screenshots of conversations with selective edits, omitting context. She tried to portray herself as the victim of overreaction and social sabotage. But these attempts backfired spectacularly. Friends and family quickly called out inconsistencies and selective editing. Social media users began fact-checking her claims, posting side-by-side comparisons of original content and her edits. Reddit threads exploded with people praising our composure and calling out Claire's manipulative tactics. The online attention served as a catalyst for accountability, forcing Claire to either escalate further or retreat. She chose the latter, largely disappearing from public commentary. Family reconciliation. The next few months were devoted to healing and rebuilding trust. Key points included: my parents openly apologized for enabling Claire's behavior in the past. Cousins and extended family began acknowledging our side of the story, reinforcing our role as level-headed and fair. Daniel and I maintained consistent boundaries, refusing to engage in drama or react emotionally. Claire, while still in the periphery, gradually lost influence over family narratives. By the end of the year, we had reached a truce of sorts, with the family recognizing our resilience and commitment to fairness. The long-term lessons. Several critical lessons emerged. Documentation matters. Keeping clear records of communication, financial contributions, and social media interactions provided undeniable evidence. Composure is power. Remaining calm in the face of extreme manipulation maintained credibility and moral authority. Allies can appear unexpectedly. Even someone who once supported Claire recognized the truth and switched sides, reinforcing the value of integrity. Boundaries are non-negotiable. Daniel and I learned that enforcing limits consistently prevents manipulation and preserves mental health. Social media is a double-edged sword. Claire's attempt to weaponize online perception ultimately backfired. Reddit verdict. Reddit users were merciless in their commentary, but overwhelmingly supportive. Comment 1 in TA, a masterclass in boundary enforcement. Your approach was textbook calm, methodical, and strategic. Claire tried to manipulate multiple layers: social media, family gatherings, and public perception. You countered with documented evidence, composure, and emotional intelligence. Many users focus on drama for entertainment, but your story is a case study in resilience and ethical confrontation. She failed because she underestimated your capacity for measured response, your social awareness, and your support network. In TA, unequivocally. Comment 2. This is the ultimate sibling showdown. Claire's manipulations were insidious and multifaceted. What makes this story remarkable is how you maintained integrity while she tried to weaponize family, social media, and friends. Daniel's role was also critical. His calm intervention neutralized the theatrical element, making Claire's attempts at public humiliation collapse. The wedding confrontation alone is legendary in family drama circles. From start to finish, the lesson is, manipulation thrives on reaction, composure kills it. NTA. Comment 3. Social media accountability wins. This saga demonstrates the power of transparent documentation. Claire tried to create a narrative without accountability, but every post, every video, every witness contradicted her version. The fallout isn't just personal. It's a social lesson on digital responsibility, ethical conduct, and the dangers of performative victimhood. You and Daniel acted as exemplars of rational conflict resolution, turning chaos into credibility. Reddit loves a juicy story, but this is educational drama at its finest. Comment 4. The psychological analysis. Claire exhibited classic manipulative behavior, gaslighting, triangulation, and public shamming. You countered with boundary setting, calm factual confrontation, strategic alliance building, documentation and verification. This is textbook, how to deal with toxic family members without losing your sanity or dignity. Your restraint didn't make you weak. It made you untouchable in the moral and social sense. Comment 5. Long-term verdict. The wedding confrontation was the apex of this saga, but the story continues to serve as a paradigm for family conflict resolution. Claire's attempts to dominate narrative spaces failed because credibility and composure always outweigh theatrics. Daniel and you not only survived her manipulations, but redefined family hierarchy in a subtle, effective, and principled way. NTA 100%. And this story will be referenced on Reddit for years as the ultimate sibling drama that ended with ethical victory and psychological triumph. Closing thoughts. Looking back, this saga reinforced one undeniable truth. Drama may be inevitable, but how you navigate it determines the outcome. Claire attempted every tactic in the manipulative playbook: public embarrassment, social media weaponization, selective truth, and emotional coercion, yet she failed at every turn. Daniel and I emerged stronger, respected, and vindicated, while also maintaining our ethical compass. This wasn't just a family feud. It was a demonstration of strategic patience, calm authority, and moral resilience. Epic verdict. NTA. Your actions showcased composure over chaos, integrity over manipulation, and rationality over theatrics. Claire's attempts at control and humiliation failed spectacularly because you refused to participate in her drama, documented everything, and maintained boundaries without apology. This story will go down in Reddit lore as one of the juiciest, most instructive, and thoroughly satisfying AITA tales ever told. If you enjoyed this wild Reddit saga, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more juicy stories every week, and drop your verdict in the comments below. I read every single one, so let me know what you think. Who do you think was really in the wrong? See you in the next one.